welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. Quebec NDP MP Romeo Saganash was born in the bush to a Cree family with 14 children. He spent the first 7 years of his life in the bush before he and his siblings were taken away to residential school. Saganash spent 10 years in residential school and went on to become a successful and well-respected lawyer before deciding to take the plunge into federal politics. He ran and won in the past federal election, and Romeo Saganash joins me now to talk all about life beyond politics. Romeo Saganash, welcome to Beyond Politics. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So you are one of 12 children. Is that right? Growing up, you were one of 12?
14.
14?
Yes, 14.
Oh, my goodness. That's a lot of kids. What was that like?
Well, growing up in the bush, because 12 of the 14 were born in the bush. So
tell me what that means. I mean, you hear that sometimes. People,
yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, it basically means that we were born in a tent, and I passed, I guess, at the first 7 years of my life, I spent with my family in the forest, hunting, fishing, trapping with them. So that was the first 7 years of my life.
Wow.
And then taken away to residential school afterwards. But that is the only time I really felt what freedom was all about. Spending all those years in the bush with my dad and my mom and my siblings. So,
where did you place in the lineup of the
towards the end?
Towards the end. Okay.
There's two younger than me.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Were you actively a part of the of all of the work as well? I mean, of the hunting and.
Oh, we had to.
You were, right? Even from that young of an age.
Oh yeah. I started paddling when I was 4 years old. So I killed my first moose when I was 12. So that's normal for a Cree who lived off the land for some time. So 12 years old is even by our standards a bit old.
What was expected of you as a child?
To help out, to learn, and that's what I wanted to do. In my life, I wanted to be like my dad, a hunter, a great hunter, gatherer, and so I was pretty outraged when I was taken away to residential school because that is exactly what I wanted to do in my life, and but sadly, my destiny was determined by Indian affairs.
What about your siblings? Did all of your siblings identify with that way of life as much as you did? I mean, thinking back on it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. When you're born an Aboriginal person, where the tradition was to live off the land, hunting, fishing, and trapping, you don't think about anything else. You basically think that that's the way that you're going to live as well for the rest of your life, and that's what I thought.
Right.
And I loved being in the bush. So we all had our each specific roles within the camp. Most of the times we were with two other families, so there was this bit of a social life, I would say. But we had our roles predetermined. So I traveled a lot with my dad when I was young by canoe. So that's why I had to learn to paddle at a very young age.
What were you traveling to do?
Checking our traps, hunting, fishing. That's basically it.
Yeah. Were you a good listener?
Absolutely.
You were, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How big were the camps? And the camp that you grew up when you talked about two other families, so it wasn't just you and your family alone. There were other people around you as well.
Well, most of the time there would be between 5 and 10 tents.
Okay.
For shelter, so and one tent for cooking
Right.
because that was separate.
Yeah.
So in each tent we would be, about 7 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you move around?
Yes, there's always a specific place for the spring. At this time of the year, it's the traditional goose break. So the geese arrive, and traditionally that's what we hunted in the springtime. So there's always a specific place for that spring hunt,
Right.
specific for winter, because it involves a lot of trapping in the wintertime. Fall moose hunting, so usually beside a lake where there's plenty of moose. And in summer times, well, beside a lake, because summer times was for fishing, a lot of fishing. So we'd move around with the seasons.
Mm-hmm. Tell me what happened and how you ended up in a residential school. What's your memory of that, of being taken, of having to go?
Well, our parents were told that they had no choice, that they had to send their children to residential school, and I remember the first time they picked us up. We were in this place called Miquelon, not far from Waswanipi, and the bus came that fall, end of August, picked us up in that afternoon and drove us to the residential school.
Did you know it was coming?
Well, my mom just basically explained that we were sent to be educated. And
did you understand what that meant?
No. No. What saddened me was leaving behind the way of life that I grew up to like and love.
Yeah.
And I still recall we arrived at the residential school in the Tuk that night. It was in the middle of the night. It was dark. I still remember the scent of the residential school as soon as I walked in the main hall. Well,
what did it smell like?
Well, it smelled like it had been just cleaned and washed. I still remember that scent when I walked in. And for the first 2 weeks of residential school at nights, because there are a lot of 5, 6, 7-year-olds that got there for the first time. And the first 2 weeks at nights, I would hear my friends cry at night, calling out for their mom. I don't know why boys call out for their mom, but they call out for their mom. And that happened for the first 2 weeks about. And so it took perhaps a year, because the first year we only went home during the summertime. And it took a year for me to understand what was happening. And I knew that I had no control of what was going on. So I had to accept at some point in time, because after the following winter, my dad passed away. And because one of the things that we also have to know about residential schools, that they separated the kids
from families.
From families. So there were 5 of us in the Tuk. There were some that were sent to Brantford, some to St. Marie, not residential schools. So Moose Factory.
Such cruelty.
Yeah. So and the morning that there was an intercom system in the residential school, in the morning that the priest called us into his office, the Saganash family. I knew what the news was going to be.
How did you react, being so far away too?
Well, I reacted with a lot of rage, because not only that he told us the bad news that my dad had passed away, but in the same sentence he also added, "But we will not be able to send you back home for funeral services." And that basically outraged me, because and my siblings were beside me weeping, and I was just outraged by the news and the way he told us that we couldn't go back home, that I couldn't say a final farewell to my dad. I just sat there and stared at him for the longest time, and staring at him. And I said to myself, I think that's where I said to myself, well, if this is how it's going to be for the next couple of years, well, might as well try to get the best out of it. And that's what I tried to do.
Really?
Yeah.
Because, a lot of other people would have reacted in the exact opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
They would have just said, I will have nothing to do with you.
Yeah. I
will not learn. I will not listen. And why do you think you reacted that way?
I guess in a certain way, I realized that I had lost an opportunity, the opportunity to be like my dad. I really wanted to be just like him, that great hunter that he was, that provided not only for his family but for the community. He was well respected for that, and that's what I wanted to be. And I realized at that very moment that I couldn't be that.
How old were you?
I was 8 years old.
8 years old.
Yeah. And I'm fortunate in a way because I lost a dad, but I got 5 moms because my sisters were all older than me, and so it was the mom and the 4 sisters that raised all the children afterwards. So I'm fortunate for that.
It sounds like you were quite a mature child already, though.
Well, when you're placed in that type of situation, you don't have many choices. You either rebel against the situation, or you accept it and try to get the best out of it. And I opted for the second option. Mm-hmm. And so we got there. They tried to take away our culture, our language, who we were as individuals, as Aboriginal people. And I got out of there, and I inherited 2 other languages besides Cree.
Right.
They couldn't kill my Cree, but I also got 2 other languages from that experience, and that helped me in life a lot. And also, the first 2 years, I wouldn't talk to the personnel. I would talk with my friends, but not with the personnel. I would just, every time they asked me questions, I would just stare at them. I wouldn't talk to them.
Is that how you maintained your Cree, then, by speaking to your friends?
We still think.
Sure.
Still think Cree.
It's your language.
Yeah. Because I only spoke Cree for the first 7 years of my life.
Right.
I never heard the other languages before.
Were you punished for speaking Cree?
Yes, we were. Yes, we were. So. Were
you punished for just staring instead of answering?
Well, one amazing thing, I guess, I'm fortunate enough also, in a way, because by doing that, in a way, I scared them.
Sure.
I scared the hell out of them. and they wouldn't, and because of that, it is because of that I feel that I didn't get abused physically or sexually like so many of us that went to residential school.
But were children around you suffering physical sexual abuse as well?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. I remember a story that in that residential school, one of my friends got abused for the 7 years that he was there, every single night, by the same person, every single night for 7 years.
What's always interested me, and what interests me particularly about your story, is that you've taken an experience that would truly have crippled, and has in some cases crippled, so many others.
Absolutely.
And you have turned it into something that makes you stronger instead. Mm-hmm. And you still continue to engage in a very pragmatic way with the culture, all the cultures around you, mm-hmm. and to try and make a difference in the country. Mm-hmm. Why did you take the experience and turn it into a positive building block for you
Well, first of all, let's admit that I'm an exception to the rule in that perspective, because I know so many of my friends that were basically killed by the experience. They have no life anymore. So I'm an exception to the rule in that sense. And like most leaders that we see today, that we know today, the Ovid McCrees and the Phil Fontaine and the Matthew Kunkans, they're all exceptions to the rule. It's not fair when government officials or the government says, well, it must have been a good experience. Look at them. They're all leaders today. Well, they're the exception to the rule. You know, the day that I realized that I couldn't be what I wanted to be, meaning like my dad, the day I realized that, I said to myself, so I'll try to get the best out of this experience, and that's basically what I did. I learned it. I was one of the best kids in mathematics, for instance, when I was in fourth grade, fifth grade. I was always the best in the class. That kind of stuff, because at one point after the third grade, they would send us into the public schools in Letuk, and they would do it on purpose to have just 2 or 3 Indian kids per class, not to have them all in the same place. And we were always the best. And I still recall the day I was in grade 5, I believe, and after a math exam, 2 of the Indian kids that were in a class, myself and another person by the name of Robert Otterites, and the teacher said, before giving the results, well, the 2 best results are the 2 Indian kids that are here. See, they're Indians and they're better than you. And I still remember that. And
I bet you do.
So it's like I said, I just wanted the best out of the experience, out of the bad experience. I wanted to get the best out of it, and that's basically what I did. And it basically made me who I am today, that experience.
How long were you there?
10 years.
Wow.
10 years in residential school, yeah.
And you would see your family in the summer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Romeo your real name?
Yeah.
Is it? How did that name, how was it chosen?
Well, like I said, we were all born, most of us were born in the bush under a tent. And on the day I was born, in October, I'm still not sure if it's 61 or 62, because in Quebec it's 62. In federal Indian Affairs it's 61, so I don't know. I'm not sure. But on October 28th, 2 hours after I was born, a float plane arrived on the lake where we were, Michigamish, it's called, and because there was a storm coming from the north, so they had to stop, and we provided tea, apparently, and bannock to the pilot and 2 other passengers, and the pilot's name was Romeo.
Really?
And my mom gave me that name because she thought it sounded right for me.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
So you've always been Romeo. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone's called you Romeo.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's a great name. It's certainly one with a lot of history.
And while I was traveling throughout the country for this leadership bit I was in for a while, everybody would ask that question.
They would.
What's this all about? An Aboriginal person named Romeo.
You just talked about the NDP leadership race, which has just ended. But I wonder how your involvement in, not even so much politics, but I mean, you were very involved with band councils, and you have always been active. Why?
Well, basically you get involved to make things happen, basically. Not necessarily change, but to make things happen. And when I started the Cree Nation Youth Council in 1985, I was the founding president of the Cree Nation Youth Council. I realized back then that that I saw the population growth among the Aboriginal communities among the Cree. And I knew that at one point that the 25, 30-year-olds would make up the majority of the populations in Aboriginal communities. So I thought to myself at that time in 1985 that we needed an institution that would speak on behalf of those youth and young people in our communities. So we created the Cree Nation Youth Council for that purpose, in order for the youth to have a voice, in order for the youth to speak for themselves in our communities, in order for the youth to determine their priorities and what their dreams are all about, and so on. So that's the reason why. And I guess all my life, one of the other things that I realized as well is that there are so few human resources in our communities. You know, I got elected as Deputy Grand Chief for the Grand Council of the Cree. I was 26 years old. And one thing I realized back then was that, yes, the Cree, during that time, during that period, from 1990 to 1993 about, I was Deputy Grand Chief. I realized that the Cree wanted a spokesperson that could express himself or herself in French, because we were going through yet another battle against James Bay II, constitutional crisis, Oka crisis, and we needed someone that could express himself or herself in French. That's the only reason why I ran, was Deputy Grand Chief for that position, and that helped. To explain your constitutional position in Quebec in French helps.
Sure. Well, it's essential, isn't it?
Yeah, and to explain why you don't want a second phase of the James Bay project in French in Quebec against Hydro-Quebec, it helps. So I realized that, and I think I contributed a lot in that sense to my nation.
I think probably what also would have helped was your stare. The famous stare you perfected.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That'll help you in media interviews, too.
Yeah.
So you also, what did you do after residential school? Did you further your education? Did you continue?
I missed life in the bush so much that I went back for a year and a half after coming out of residential school. And I went on to complete my high school and CEGEP in Quebec College. Then after CEGEP, I went back again for a year. And
back home?
Yeah, back home in the bush. I lived in the bush before deciding to go to the university, because at that age you don't know what you want to do.
Right.
So I went back in the bush, and it just by coincidence I walked into the chief in 1985. In my community, I had gone back.
Just when you had formed the youth group.
And I was walking in the village. I had gone back to the village to pick up a couple of things before heading back out in the bush, and I bumped into the chief at the time, and he said, Romeo, there's an interesting symposium going on in Montreal next weekend. It will deal with the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement 10 years after. It should be interesting. It should be of interest to you. Why don't you come? We'll pay for your expenses. We'll pay for your room, your travel, and all that, your meals. So I went. And on the second day, there's a panel of all the different legal councils that represented the different parties at that time, the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement negotiations, the Hydro-Quebec lawyer, the Quebec government lawyer, the federal government lawyer, the Inuit, and the lawyer that represented the Cree on the same panel. They were discussing the role of the courts during that time. And as I listened to the lawyer that represented the Cree, I said to myself, I can do that. And so the following year, I enrolled in university in law school.
That's fabulous. Yeah. So you are a trained lawyer then? Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Was it a natural step to go into politics then?
Not really. I enjoyed doing what I did. I worked in that capacity for the Grand Council of Cree for more than 25 years, and did most of the work that at the United Nations for that famous United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So I worked on that for 23 years. It's a long time. Those were long negotiations and difficult negotiations and complex negotiations that took a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of emotions as well, because there are times where we almost reach agreements on certain difficult provisions under the declaration, but and then something just happened, or one government would raise opposition to it, then everything would fall apart after 6-7 years of discussing the right of self-determination of Indigenous peoples, for instance. That took a long time to discuss and negotiate, and there were times that it just completely fell apart. And there were times in those 23 years where I said to myself, why don't I just go back home and do what I like? But I maintained the effort for 23 years, and we got the declaration now.
In effect, you have gone back home now, in a way.
Yeah.
And when you were approached to run, my understanding is that you were approached to run a couple of times before you actually made the decision that you wanted your kids to be older, that you wanted to be at the right stage for you in your life. But my understanding was also that you thought you might run in a more urban riding and where you were living, and that Mr. Layton said no, he'd like you to go back home. And I wonder what it's been like for you to be back home now, to be representing back home, to be representing also one of the country's largest ridings. What kind of an emotional impact has it had on you to be back there now?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that Jack insisted. You know, there are a lot of things that I remember, you know, in the many discussions that we had, late Jack and I. There were plenty of them, but the one phrase that still resonates today for me is that nobody, you're going back home, buddy. That's what he told me, because I wanted to run in Quebec City, right in Quebec City, because I had spent more than 20 years in Quebec City, and that's why I wanted to run, because I know everybody in Quebec City. And he said, no, you're going home, buddy. I'm glad he did, because not only that I'm enjoying what I'm doing now as an MP, I enjoy representing that riding, because it's so diversified. I have the 14 Inuit villages, I have the 9 Cree communities, I have 2 Algonquin communities, and the rest are mining and forestry towns. It's so diversified that it's quite a challenge to represent that riding. And one of the things that he also mentioned when he insisted, Jack, when he insisted that I take that riding, is that he said to me, consider the fact that most of the global challenges that we have today, climate change, the environment, resource development, future of Indigenous peoples, our relations with Indigenous peoples, all of these challenges that we find around the planet are also in that writing. So, and who better than you can represent that writing? So that's why I decided to go there, and I'm glad that he insisted.
I'm so glad that you took the time to be here today. It's just been truly fascinating to have the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you.